How do you score 5 goals and still look vulnerable? In one of the most chaotic Champions League encounters in recent memory, Barcelona's 5-4 victory over Benfica perfectly encapsulated everything brilliant and concerning about Hansi Flick's tactical revolution. Penalties, moments of individual brilliance, inexplicable errors, this match had it all. But beneath the mayhem lies a fascinating tactical tale. This is how Barcelona's high-risk, high-reward system can both dominate and destabilize, sometimes within the same minute of play. Let's begin with how both teams approach this match from the first whistle, because Benfica's build-up strategy would set the tone for everything that followed. What is the difference between these two pressing sequences? Here we see Benfica able to play out from the back effortlessly and move up the pitch. But here we see Barcelona winning the ball back high up the pitch and almost getting into a goal-scoring position. Koundé is similarly positioned in both, so that's not the issue. So what exactly is the difference? Understanding this is key to uncovering why Barcelona's press almost killed them off in this match. From the very first goal kick, Benfica deployed an asymmetric build-up shape that would cause Barcelona problems all night. Rather than having their centre-back split evenly, Benfica's right-sided centre-back would drift to the edge of the box, whilst Otamendi, the left centre-back, remained central alongside the goalkeeper, a small detail that had major implications. Barcelona's press, meanwhile, showed both promise and problems. Yamal and Rafinha tucked inside as they always do under Flick, with Lewandowski deeper picking up a pivot. But here is the key detail. Yamal, rather than lining himself up with Otamendi, was directly positioned to press the goalkeeper. Why is this an issue? Well, it meant that once the ball was live, Yamal pressed the goalkeeper, meaning he always had an easy outlet option to the centre-back who could be in an unchallenged position. Imagine if instead, Yamal was lined up with Otamendi. What this would mean is if the Argentine received the ball, Yamal could use a curved press to apply pressure on the centre-back while looking to cut out the pass to the left-back and allow Koundé to be more conservative. That would mean that even if Otamendi did go back to the goalkeeper, Yamal could carry on his press, but now he would be cutting off the pass back into the centre-back, killing two birds with one stone. Remember that successful press? Well, Barcelona did some of this almost inadvertently. It's a rare occasion where Lewandowski ends up as the highest presser in open play, meaning he is the man directly on the goalkeeper. So this time, Yamal naturally stays wider. So while the pass to Otamendi is still on, Yamal can still apply instant pressure, forcing him into a risky pass. Because Benfica have limited outballs, Koundé can then be confident in backing up the press, and he wins it back. But of course, this was a much rarer occurrence. Instead, we often saw this: Yamal central and Otamendi having acres of space. And early on in the match, perhaps because they were ahead so early and wanted to play it safe, Benfica would ignore this obvious pass and instead look to play over the press. But as the game progressed, they began to take advantage of this situation. And because Yamal was caught on the inside, it meant that Koundé would be drawn higher up the pitch. But rather than arriving in a great position to put a man under pressure, because the centre-back had so much time on the ball, Koundé was 2 versus 1 down and could not commit to the press, putting Benfica in an even better position to play out. And that had massive knock-on effects higher up. We see that perfectly here. Rafinha on a centre-back, Lewandowski on the deeper pivot, and Yamal caught central. The left centre-back easily receives, and Koundé is 2 versus 1 down, meaning the Barca right-back has to press the Benfica centre-back, leaving even more room for Benfica's own left-back. So now, the left winger is drawing Araujo across, and Casado has dropped in to cover as a centre-back. Otherwise, the gap between the centre-backs would have been too large. But that reduces Barcelona's presence in the midfield, allowing Benfica to play it central. And here we come into one of the biggest knock-on effects of Barcelona's pressing shape. Just before we assess that, if you're someone who doesn't want to just watch tactical analysis on YouTube, but wants to master it yourself, I have exciting news. Tactical Mastery is officially live. I've spent months meticulously crafting this program to be the complete system to teach you everything I know about tactical analysis, brick by brick, from the ground up, in the same simple FMS style that you've come to trust. When I began my analysis journey nearly a decade ago, I desperately needed exactly this step-by-step learning framework. With Tactical Mastery, you'll learn in a fraction of the time what took me years and years and years. I've designed Tactical Mastery to be perfect for anybody who's looking to elevate their understanding. Whether you want to see the beautiful game through the eyes of an analyst, become a tactical creator yourself, or take your first confident steps into football's technical realm. So if you're ready to transform your tactical understanding, click the link in the description or visit footballmadesimple.co.uk. And to celebrate the launch, the first few to sign up will get 10% off using the code EXTRA10. Having Rafinha and Yamal high and central means that Barcelona are constantly at risk of leaving the fullbacks 2 versus 1 down. And running the prior scenario on, that's exactly what we see. The right winger draws in Balde, allowing the late run from the fullback, putting Balde in a dangerous scenario. And this was not a one-time occurrence, as we see it played out again here. The goalkeeper is in possession, Lewandowski is tying up the midfielder. Yamal tries the curved press, but it's not enough, and Otamendi receives again. It means by the time Koundé presses, the left back has time to orient himself. He drives forward, and again, space emerges on the far side. So were Barcelona actually ever punished for this pressing shape? Yes. Instantly. It played into the opener. From the goal kick, we see that all too familiar front 3 pressing shape. And as discussed, early in the match, Benfica were playing over the press, but it still means Rafinha and Yamal are high, with the Barcelona fullbacks also up the pitch. Benfica win the first ball. Koundé has recovered. Yamal has not. It opens up the switch to the left back as the winger is tying up Koundé. The left back now has room for the cross, leading to the finish. While Barcelona's own pressing had its flaws, their build-up play demonstrated why Flick's system can be so devastating. On paper, Benfica lined up in a 4-3-3, but football isn't played on paper. In reality, the midfielder pushed up alongside the forward, so that in the defensive stance, Benfica were in a 4-4-2, as we can see in the average positioning. The small detail would have major tactical implications. Barcelona's initial build-up structure was perfectly designed to manipulate this shape. Their centre-back stayed narrow, close to the goalkeeper, while the full-back started slightly deeper than usual. And this was for 2 reasons. Benfica's 4-4-2 meant their front 2 was perfectly placed to apply pressure onto the centre-back, meant that Araujo and Kubasi always had emergency outlet options. But Benfica committed to the press, meaning at times the wingers would join in, moving them into a 4-2-4 when Barcelona were building from goal kicks. But it was an open play where Barcelona's structure truly evolved. Balde would push aggressively on the left for all 90 minutes, allowing Rafinha to have a freer moving role in the midfield, while Koundé initially remained more conservative on the right, creating an asymmetric shape that gave Benfica constant headaches. Benfica's 4-4-2 was a calculated risk, in theory to allow them to go man-to-man against Barcelona's backline when needed. In practice, it left them horrifically exposed in the midfield. The key to making this shape work would have been their forward duo's positioning. They needed to use their cover shadows to cut off the passes into Barcelona's pivot players, while still maintaining pressure on the centre-backs. This would allow their own double pivot to drop deeper and cover the room that Gavi and Rafinha were looking to exploit. But Benfica failed horribly in the execution of this. The pressing angle from the forwards was consistently off, meaning it was fairly straightforward for Barcelona to break that first line of pressure and find Pedri or Casado. This would leave the Benfica midfield with decisions to make. They could stay deep, with subsequent passes carving their defensive structures apart, or Benfica could adapt. In a desperate bid to prevent Barcelona's deeper pivots getting on the ball unchallenged, Benfica pushed their own pivots onto Barcelona's to cut out these passing lanes. The problem? Of course, Gavi and potentially Rafinha would be free between the lines, and Benfica were banking on it being too difficult for a centre-back to pierce 2 layers of defensive lines. But this is where the freakish line-breaking ability of Kubasi has become the ultimate get-out-of-jail-free card for Barcelona. He had absolutely no problem playing through the defensive lines, and he was consistently able to find Gavi or Rafinha, who could then turn and be running at the Benfica backline. So slowly, the Benfica midfield found themselves dropping deeper and deeper. Each tactical adjustment by Benfica seemed to create 2 more problems to solve, exactly as Flick's system is designed to do. So how do you dominate the ball and still concede 4 goals? Well, for all of Barcelona's intricacies in possession, their high defensive line nearly proved their undoing. The theory behind a high line is simple: compress the space, keep the opposition pinned back, win the ball back higher up the pitch. But here's the thing: a high line is only as strong as its coordination. That's coordination between the backline, but also the goalkeeper. And this is where Barcelona's problems began. Benfica, like every team this season, are aware of Barcelona's determination to use an aggressive high line to play the opponent offside, and as a result, Benfica constantly had runners in behind. And there were several disconnects in the Barcelona shape, the first being between the centre-backs. Consistently, Araujo would commit to holding the high line, while Kubasi was keener to follow the centre-forward when he made moves deeper, creating an opportunity for Benfica to find the runner in the chaos. But it wasn't just about the centre-backs. Szczesny was often caught in 2 minds on whether to charge out or trust the recovery ability of his back line. The warning signs were there early. Benfica consistently threatened to get in behind, with Koundé being drawn to the fullback and leaving space for runners to exploit. Araujo's insistence on holding the line while others dropped only made these situations more dangerous. And then came the inevitable punishment. Benfica's second goal exposed every flaw in the high line. The disjointed defensive line, the hesitation from Szczesny, the space for runners to exploit, the lack of coordination and communication, all coming together in one moment of defensive collapse. It was the perfect illustration of the risk-reward nature of Flick's system. The same aggressive positioning that allowed Barcelona to dominate possession also left them vulnerable to the simplest of attacking patterns. The question wasn't whether Benfica would get chances, it was whether Barcelona could score enough to make the defensive gamble worth it. Barcelona were chasing the game and needed to change something. For all the defensive vulnerability, Flick's attacking vision was crystal clear. Exploit Benfica's risky double pivot in the 4-4-2 at any cost. The foundation was laid on the left flank early on. Balde maintained that extremely aggressive position, often being Barca's highest player. This wasn't just about providing width, it allowed Rafinha to drift inside into more dangerous central areas. The Brazilian has been a goal and assist machine since Flick has arrived at the Camp Nou, and the German wanted him as close to the decisive areas as possible. Benfica had the lead, so they were searching for ways to prevent themselves being overloaded. They were pushed deeper and deeper, and their forwards began to drop in to help defend that midfield region and reduce the overload against their pivots. Flick identified an opportunity. If he could get his most technical players operating in close proximity in the central zones, their quick combinations could break through Benfica's compressed defensive block. Flick was ruthless in making the necessary changes to make this happen. Casado and Gavi were the initial changes, replaced by Fermin Lopez and De Jong. This had an impact on the defensive shape. Before, their rest defense was a 3-2 in most situations, with Koundé being the third centre-back, and a Pedri-Casado double pivot ahead of them. In the second half, De Jong was entrusted to do all of the progression as the deepest pivot, something he was more than happy to do, and this let Pedri move into a more attack-minded role, to try and overload Benfica's midfield. Koundé's role also shifted, and we see in the average positions, he's not as deep as we're accustomed to, and he was given the license to push up to provide the width earlier than ever. The result? Yamal, rather than purely providing the width, could also move in field. It was an enormous risk in transition, leaving huge spaces for Benfica to exploit if they could win the ball back. But this shape and tactical ability allowed Barcelona to create the quick combinations and box overloads that Flick deemed worth the gamble. And the overload paid off, as having so many technical players constantly on the move became impossible to defend. Pedri pierced the Benfica midfield, finding Ferran on for Balde. He lays it off into Lewandowski, who nicks it to Yamal, making the run into the box, and the penalty is given. So what did we learn from this chaotic encounter? That Flick's Barcelona is a system of extremes, tactically brilliant but defensively vulnerable, capable of scoring 5 while looking fragile at every moment. It's high-risk, high-reward football taken to its logical conclusion. And while it might give Barcelona fans heart attacks, it's certainly never boring. And don't forget to check out Tactical Mastery through the link below if you want to level up your tactical understanding. And remember to use the code EXTRA10 to get 10% more off.